Okay, we are live on TikTok, live on Facebook and YouTube, and waiting to go live on stream on Instagram. Here we are. All right. Welcome to Unconventional Conversations with Pastor Paul here on Evangelicalish. And this is where we talk about issues and biblical things and get a perspective you might not normally hear because I've just always been one of those people who look at things and say, wait a second, I know the mob is all saying it's this, but have we thought about this other way of looking at things? And so, welcome, glad you're here. And I want to talk about the issue of trans athletes in sports today because this is one of those issues where I see the mob all saying, ooh, we're terrified of trans athletes and they're taking over the world. And multiple states are looking to ban. And it's one of those issues where I see people being manipulated. A friend of mine who I've known for a long time, who is a very sweet man, told me on social media something the other day. Well, actually, let me change hats to do this. He says, uh, trans people, these men should not be playing sports with these women. And there was a video of a volleyball player knocking down a woman, and it turned out to be a video of an AFAB woman knocking down another woman. And he was like, I hope this poor girl finds a husband to take care of her, but it's just not fair to have men playing sports with girls. And we hear that quite a bit, don't we? These men should not be playing sports with women. And I usually hear it from people who, I guarantee you, were not out there fighting for Title IX money in the 90s for women to play sports. I guarantee you. So stop the insanity. Men should not be playing sports with girls. Yeah. Here's a news flash. What I hear about this a lot is it's not fair. It's not fair. It's not fair for the girls. And a lot of people talking about fairness, and I like fairness too. But here's a news flash. Somebody's asking on TikTok, what is AFAB? It's assigned female at birth. Um, Fairness is great. But here's a shocker. Nature isn't fair. Michael Phelps is the greatest swimmer in the history of mankind. And he worked really hard to get that title, but also nature gave him physical attributes that make him greater than other swimmers who worked just as hard as he did. And it just wasn't fair that nature gave him that advantage. I'm going to tell you something. I'm not even kidding about this. I worked hard enough to be in the NBA. I should be an NBA basketball player based on how hard I worked. But you know what? Nature's just not fair. Nature only gave me 5 feet 9 inches of height, didn't give me enough jumping ability, didn't give me enough speed. And so it didn't matter that I worked my bleeping ass off. I didn't get the major D1 scholarship offers that it takes to play in the NBA. And you know what else isn't fair in life? That some people are born into a biological body that has attributes of a sex that doesn't line up with the gender they feel they are inside. But you know what's amazing in modern technology and science is that we have medicines and surgeries that can correct that. Just like the procedures that we have to remove breast tissue from a cis male, an AMAB person who doesn't feel they should have these little breast tissues on their chest because they don't line up with the gender that they see themselves as. Or We provide facial hair, permanent facial hair removal for women that don't like the facial hair that grows, or breast enhancement because they don't feel like nature gave them the breast size that they want, or Botox, or for cis females, we do gender affirming care for humans all the time, and don't even get me started on the little blue pill. All of that is gender affirming care, helping men to be men and women to be women. So why is it suddenly that we hate there is surgery to help a trans person feel better about their body to more line up with the gender they feel inside? Gender and gender roles are completely culturally constructed. You can see genders around the world that line up differently than the gender roles that have been traditional in America. And by the way, the Bible, it says God made, we translate it as man. That word Adam or Adam literally means humanity. It doesn't mean a person. It doesn't mean a male person. It means humanity. God made humanity in his image, male and female. He made them. So it said that verse is literally saying male and female are in the image of the creator, if we wanted to say that. So the idea that there are only two genders and that's it, it says right there in Genesis, is just not a fact of what the Bible says. And, you know, we Christians colonizingly call that the Old Testament. It's actually Hebrew scripture. And if you talk to somebody from the heritage of the Hebrews, they would say, no, we believed in more than two genders back when that book was written. That has been a long-standing history of humanity in the world, that there were people that didn't fit in the two gender cultural categories. And then somebody will say, well, God's a male. No, God or the divine is something beyond humanity that's categorized in gender identification. Even Paul wrote, there's neither slave nor Greek, male nor female. Jesus said, in heaven, you're not going to be married. You're not going to be known as you are on earth. That there's not this gender identification that means so much. God is written as a male in the Bible, I believe, for one reason and one reason only, because the people that wrote these books only knew a male as an authority. They had no idea that a woman would ever be an authority anytime in the world. And so, of course, a divine authority had to be a male, because women could never be in charge. So, of course, God was a male. So, this built-in feeling of women being second class has a lot to do with all of this. I really believe ultimately, oh God, what am I doing with my hair? I really believe ultimately the trans issue, that, the reason we demonize it so much is a lot of people feel like, well, why would a man want to be a woman when women are, and we don't say it out loud, right? But like when women are second class citizens, why would a man want to be a woman? You know, why would a man want to be something less than a man? And so, of course, that is looked down upon. But Jesus said in the book of Matthew, that eunuch over there, that effeminate male, that non procreating male you make fun of, some of them were born that way. Some of them are that way for the work of the kingdom. Some of them are made that way by other men. This hatred of queerness and of trans people is a man-made thing. It's not biblical. And the trans in sports issue is a political, religious demonization of a people group. or political and religious power gathering purposes. So let me tell you something about the trans in sports issue. There were over 500,000 college athletes in America in this past year. Do you know how many trans athletes were competing in college athletics this past year? The estimate is at most 10, 10 trans athletes out of, I think it was around 510,000 athletes. 10. I'm not 10,000, not 1,000, 10. And do you know how many of them you know about? Probably at most, if you're really paying attention to the issue, you know of two. Two. And do you know why you only know of two? Because these are not athletes dominating their sport. There's a volleyball player at San Jose State that has caused a stir. And do you know that she has played at San Jose State for 3 years before anybody ever knew anything about her at all? Do you know why? Because she was not dominating the sport. It is a made up issue to manipulate you to be controlled by religion and to vote for a political party. And it's really sad. Most of these trans athletes competing in sports are just another student athlete trying to live their lives, be the best person, athlete, student they can be. But the trans athletes have an infinitely harder road in life because people like you, who I think are good people at your core, have been taught that you are supposed to hate them. And then say, well, I don't hate them. I just am telling them they're going to hell and they shouldn't be playing sports and they shouldn't exist. That's hatred. That's hatred. Can you imagine if somebody looked at you and said, because of what you look like, because of who you love, because of what church you go to, you don't deserve to exist? 10 athletes in college athletics, and you've only heard of two of them because they're not dominating the sports. You don't just put on a skirt and become a trans athlete. A trans person's body goes through an incredibly rigorous transformation. It's not a simple process. And our incoming president once says, little Johnny goes to school a boy and comes home a girl. You have to be unbelievably ignorant to believe that. To even make that statement in a conversation over coffee, you have to be unbelievably ignorant. To say it on a campaign trail of a presidential race, you either have to be unbelievably ignorant or believe your followers are unbelievably ignorant, because there's nothing true in that statement. Nothing is happening of the kind, and it's not even possible for something of the kind to happen. It's not an easy process for a person to do hormone therapy and et cetera to help their body to line up with their gender identity. And it makes it somebody who is an athlete then after that process is somebody to be admired. Now, having gone through male puberty, is there a chance for them to have greater muscle mass and bone structure? Yes. And we can, if we were rational about the issue, we could have discussion around that. But we're not rational around the issue. And therefore, if we have to pick a side, I'm going to pick a side to stand with the outcast, because that's what the Bible commands us to do 2,000 times. The Bible never once commands us to ban abortion, but 2,000 times it says to stand with the marginalized. I'll finish with this, and then I'll have conversation with some of you, particularly your wonderful Christians who are making your usual loving comments in my chat I see on, particularly on TikTok. Glad you all are with me on Instagram and YouTube and Facebook as well. So we're finished with this. The state of Utah's legislature decided to pass a a ban against trans athletes in sports, as so many other states, out of fear and ignorance, have done in recent days. And their Trump supporting governor, Spencer Cox, said, I'm going to veto this bill. And he wrote a letter to explain why he was going to veto it. A Republican Trump supporting governor said, I'm going to veto this bill. And he wrote a letter to tell why. And I want to show you some of what Spencer Cox wrote. For those of you on Instagram and YouTube and Facebook, you can see what I have on the screen. Those of you on TikTok will just have to trust that I read. And it's really pretty amazing. And again, let me remind you one more time, this is a Republican governor who is a massive Trump supporting governor. And this is what he had to say in the letter that he wrote. He says, 4 kids. I'm sorry, wait, maybe I don't have this in order here. Let me see if I can get this bigger so I can read it. He says, when in doubt, I go to kindness, mercy, and I can't read what the third word is because it's too small on my screen. Oh, here we go. I go to kindness, mercy, and compassion. He said these trans kids, 4 transgender kids participating in high school sports in Utah out of 75,000 high school athletes in our state. 4. One of them is a transgender student playing in girls' sports. And then he goes on to note that 86% of trans youth in the state of Utah report suicidality. 56% of trans youth in the state of Utah have attempted suicide. He says, we're passing a law against 4 children out of 75,000 students. And he says, it's a complicated issue, but I always defer to kindness, mercy, and compassion. Again, Republican, Trump supporting governor. And then he finishes with this amazing finish that just tears at my heart. He says, 4 kids and only one of them playing in girls' sports. That's what all of this hubbub is about. 4 kids who aren't dominating, winning trophies, or taking scholarships. 4 kids who are just trying to find some friends and feel like they are a part of something. 4 kids trying to get through each day. Rarely has so much fear and anger been directed at so few. He says, I want these kids to live. And all the research shows that even a little acceptance and connection can reduce suicidality significantly in trans children. For that reason, as much as any other, I have taken this action in the hope that we can continue to work together and find a better way. And then he talks about the legislature. He says, if a veto override occurs, I hope, gosh, boy, TikTok said they just restricted some of you. So I hope you assholes are not taking over the chat. He says, if a veto override occurs, I hope we can work to find ways to show these 4 kids that we love them and they have a place in Utah. And he goes on to say, politically, it would be much easier for me just to sign this bill, but I'm going to do what I feel is right, which is so rare in the Trump era of politics, isn't it? So I just want to tell you, you're being manipulated on this issue. And it's as old as politics itself. Find a people group we can demonize and create fear around, whether it's migrants or Muslims or trans people, and then just demonize the heck out of them. And if you can find a way to get good people to agree with you and be afraid and to hate on people, all the better. But I want to encourage you, and this is always the work I want to do, is to not let your eyes be blinded and your ears be stopped up by political and religious manipulation, but take a moment to think for a whole bunch of different ways. Is it worth it for us to demonize an entire people group for 10 athletes in college sports that are trans out of 510,000 athletes altogether? And of those 10, at most, I've heard of two of them because they're outstanding athletes in women's sports. Is that a good reason to pass a law that demonizes a, probably about 1.5%? What we know in good estimates is 1.5% of the American population, and I dare say there's at least another 1.5% of the American population who won't tell anybody they're trans because they know good people like you will look at them and say some of the things like some people are saying in my comments on my string here. So I encourage those of you who have not completely lost your eyes to see and ears to hear that you would stop and think just for a second. Is it worth it to demonize people? Because I believe, just let's just take Donald Trump for instance. I guarantee you in the 90s when women were fighting for equality in collegiate sports, I guarantee you Donald Trump was not fighting for money for women in college sports. So I don't believe you when you tell me this is about fairness in women's sports, because the same people who are now screaming about fairness in women's sports didn't give a shit about fairness in women's sports when Title IX came on the scene big time in the 90s. You didn't give a shit. In fact, you were the one saying, well, girls shouldn't be taking money away from boys' sports. And so I don't believe you when you say this is about fairness in women's sports. I believe it's about the demonization of a people group because you're being manipulated by people who are trying to build political power bases. And I don't I don't say that to like make you feel demeaned. I'm saying that to make you look in the mirror and say, could it possibly be true? Is there a chance I'm being manipulated for political and religious gain? Could it possibly be true that Hebrew culture, in which the Hebrew scripture that Christians call the Old Testament, was written in an environment where there were more than two genders, which my Jewish friends all tell me there was? Could it be true that nowhere in the Bible did Jesus ever once condemn a queer person? And in fact, in his endorsement of the eunuchs, or in his saying, hey, religious city of Capernaum, where I did most of my miracles and most of my work, you think you're special? You think you're going to be lifted up? No, you're going down to Hades, and Sodom is going to have a better judgment day than you. That maybe Jesus doesn't value your religious piety quite as much as you do. And I'm going to tell people they're going to hell, so I'm a good Christian. And Jesus is like, that's not what I've asked you to do in the slightest. I'm here to speak to people who have eyes to see and ears to hear and say, can you possibly consider something different than you've known? Let me go back to that last screen that we had, and then I'll be done and have chat with you all for a bit. Um, and it has a verse. Is this the one? Yeah, here it is. So Jeremiah and Jesus both in very different times in history were living in very similar times as to what I believe we're living in now. And Jeremiah was telling his religion and his culture, like, we're in some deep shit, people. He's like, he says all those prophets are running around saying we're not going to be taken over by Babylon because we're special to God. We matter to God more than other countries. He's going to make Israel great again. The prophets were running around screaming, and Jeremiah's like, no, that's not what's going to happen, because we've forgotten what really matters in the world. And in fact, Babylon is going to take us over, and it's God's mercy that that's going to happen, because this is going to bring us back to who we're supposed to be. And so this is the verse I have at the bottom of this on the screen that you can see on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram. And I'll just read it for you on TikTok. It says, "They have become rich and have grown fat and sleek. They know no limits in deeds of wickedness. They do not judge with justice. They do not care of the cause of the orphan," which represents the outcast and the economically disadvantaged. "They do not defend the rights of the needy." Gosh, isn't that true? Just look at the government shutdown right now. It's a severe lack of caring about people who really need government service. And then it takes a turn and says, "Shall I not punish them for these things, says the Lord? And shall I not bring retribution on a nation such as this?" That's from Jeremiah 5:27 and 29. In the Bible, there is, in the Hebrew scriptures and in the Christian New Testament, there is not a single command, not one, to ban abortion. There are about 2,000 to seek justice, not just care for, but seek justice for the poor, the foreigner, the marginalized, and the widow, the economically disadvantaged. And we see all through the Bible, and we actually see all through history, when a people group forgets these commands, God avenges himself against those countries and those people groups. And I take solace today. I've been so disturbed since election day at, like, who are these people that we've become? Where did just basic empathy and our soul go? And Jeremiah is noted in the prophetic book of Jeremiah, but also is noted to have written the book of Lamentations that follows. And Lamentations is built on lamenting. And so he wrote a book of lament that my people have lost it. They are no longer good people. We are no longer followers of God. And I'm taking solace in the fact that I think we're in a very similar era where I hear Christians say, God wanted Donald Trump to be president. And there's a part of me that's like, yeah, maybe true. And maybe all of it was to really expose the ugly, ugly heart of our Christian culture in our country. Because I'm stunned at how unempathetic and uncaring for humanity American Christians are. And maybe the blessing of the Trump era is that need to tell jokes with the N word in it, that need to call people, excuse my language, the fag, that need to be able to tell women, get back in the kitchen where you should be. I didn't realize how strong that need was in our culture. You smart people trying to encourage me to be a better person. Who are you to tell me those things? And all through history and all through the Bible, when a people group get their heart into that space, that empire comes to an end. And maybe that's where we are. Maybe that's what needs to happen so we can change. So I lament and I take solace in that lament that Jesus was walking by the temple one day with his disciples and they said, Jesus, look at these buildings. Isn't our culture and our religion amazing? And if we could ever just get the Romans out of here, we could make our country great again. And Jesus said, not one stone of that thing is going to stand on top of another. And you know what he didn't say? He didn't say, pray that that doesn't happen. Pray that God saves your culture and your religion. No, he said, no, it's coming down. Pray that you're not pregnant when it happens because that's going to be really miserable. And so I feel in a lot of ways we're in the same space where like we're getting we're getting our justice for who we have become for quite a while now. And our my job, at least for sure, is to try to save as many people as I can from the stones that will come crashing down due to the bad decisions we've made as a people group. And to be one to say, like, you know, those trans people you're supposed to be afraid of, well, I'm one of them. Here I am. You need to really decide if you've really thought this through or you're just responding to propaganda and manipulation and hating on 4 kids in Utah, one who's a trans kid playing in girls' sports, so that you can feel good about whatever it is it makes you feel good about to demonize that people group. Because I want to encourage you to be a better version of yourself than that. Or at least think about it. At least take a moment and say, is this really how I'm supposed to be? All right. That's it for my unconventional conversation today. Love to hear your thoughts on trans women in sports. All right. I see my my live got flagged for hate speech and hateful behaviors. You know, Christians are always reporting me for this guy's hateful because he doesn't agree with our dogma and indoctrination. Mm, whatever happened to you people? Well, I know what happened. Jesus said you would lose your ability to have eyes to see and ears to hear. Stephanie on Instagram says they claim that they love people so much they don't want them to go to hell. Yeah, I hear that excuse all the time for treating people like crap. DL on YouTube says most people have never met a single trans person, much less have they lost an athletic competition to one. Why can't they let people just live their lives and be happy? And there's also one other thing I tell people uh, about trans people is I guarantee you've already been in a bathroom with one. I guarantee you've already been in a bathroom with one. Um, so that whole if I get in the bathroom with a queer person, they're going to molest me. No, no. Charlotte on TikTok says, much love. Thanks for using your platform to speak God's truth. Thank you, Charlotte. That's beautiful. Cindy Sue says, love doesn't come with the threat of outcast. That's not the Christ I know. Beautiful. Danny says, hello from Nevada. Hi. So if you're in a bathroom with a murder, then murdering is okay. Yeah, no, that doesn't even equate to anything of an analogy that makes sense. Yeah. Padlock says, especially given the overabundance of faiths of infinitely better reputation. Listen, I'm okay with people finding their spirituality through Christianity, but it's the second you start saying, my individual sect of Christianity has it all correct, and all of culture should be molded to the indoctrination and dogma of my religious sect, and everybody else who's not molded to that indoctrination is going to hell and burn forever, and therefore I can disregard them as human beings. That's when I step up and say, your religion is bad, and not one stone of that thing's going to stand on another. It's exactly what Jesus was saying about his own religion. He wasn't saying, I want, he wasn't anti Semitic. Jesus was not a Christian, by the way. He never, ever said anything that indicated he would approve of this Christianity we have in America today, not once. And he was not anti Semitic. He was just saying, look, some people have co opted our religion and made it into this political, rules based thing. And I'm trying to reconnect people to the spirit of heaven, which is their divine right as human beings. So, Danny K says, thanks for doing this. My child is having a real hard time after the election. Yeah. I think giving air to any problematic faith is a bad choice. You can't, Padlock, I understand what you're saying. I just don't think, first off, I think I find great spiritual comfort in the story of Jesus. I don't think the story itself is actually damaging to humanity when we really look at it for what it is. And so I find great solace in it. And so but also American Christian nationalism, American Christianity exists and is creating trauma. And so we have to talk about it. We can't just put our head in the sand and act like it doesn't exist while it destroys people's lives. Many world faiths don't have abundant stories of genocide in their name. I agree, but I also don't believe that everything that has a negative history as part of its reality then immediately becomes thrown out forever and ever. I just think there's a dangerous game there. And I think there is good. I mean, I really do believe religion is an evolutionary structure that has, has existed because it was beneficial to humanity. And so let's figure out how to use it as a beneficial tool rather than a destructive one. Hi, Art on YouTube. Um, Padlock says in Hindu, yet I follow the writings of Sikhs, Hindus, yogis, pagans, etc. Yeah, I love that. Danny Cases, I appreciate what you're doing. Thank you. Well, Danny, do me a favor, subscribe to my platforms, YouTube, TikTok, Instagram. And if you can, go to my website, pastor-paul.com. I've got a lot of cool stuff on there. I'm trying to survive in this environment where, you know, what's the guy's name that owns Meta? I can't even remember now. He's going down to Mar-a-Lago to genuflect in front of Der Leader, and so all of my content's being squashed by all of the platforms because they're all afraid of Der Leader. And I guess Elon Musk is president now, and Trump is going to be vice president. But whatever. So they're all very, very afraid, and yeah, Zuckerberg, and so all of my stuff's being squashed. So as much as you can, share, like, comment. If you can do a little bit of financial support on my website, that's wonderful. I'm going back to school for my master's to get certified as a therapist, so I can survive in capitalist America. And so yeah, but as much as you can help, I appreciate it. All right, guys, just a few more minutes. If anybody has any more questions or thoughts, I would love to chat about it all with you. Let's see. What am I trying to do here? Trying to see what's on Instagram. Did you see my question about Vivekananda? No, I did not. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Padlock. I did not. Stephanie says, as much as I don't believe in God anymore, I do still find wisdom in the story. Yeah, I agree. Tell Danny that if they aren't already, they should find a support group in the trans community. All right, Danny, that's what Stephanie says. And Stephanie is in the trans community and a good friend of mine and very wonderful. Um, Thank you for caring enough to speak truth about so much hatred. What's been your wife's response to your sudden personal change? Well, it's not been sudden. It's been going on for a long time, and we're walking it through together. It's we've been together for 31 years. We're figuring it out what life means to be together and in knowing who we are somewhere else. It's not hatred when you point out someone's sickness. It's totally hatred when you point out someone's sickness, A, out of ignorance, B, when you have no relationship in that person's life. It's not your place to determine whether they're sick or not. Just because you have an indoctrinated interpretation of an ancient writing doesn't give you permission to walk up to somebody and so presumptively tell them they're sick. It doesn't, it just makes you an asshole. It just makes you an asshole. And I don't think Jesus ever demonstrated that. He demonstrated building, he broke cultural norms to build relationship in moments, and in that interaction with the woman at the well that he should never have been involved in, because men did not have any interaction in public with women that they were not married to. That was a pure violation of culture. Then him as a holy teacher to be sitting with the Samaritan woman was a cultural and religious violation. And here he is sitting with her. And you know, he so he's putting himself at risk to interact with her, does a prophetic moment where he says, that's right, you're not married. You've been married 5 times before, and now you're living with the man who you're not married with. And then Christians are like, see, he pointed out her sickness of sin. But in fact, if you knew what that culture was, being divorced 5 times as a woman was not hard, because it was such a patriarchal society that the saying was a man could divorce his wife if she burned his toast. And so a woman getting put away, a man would marry a woman so he could have sex with her because adultery was so horrible. And then he could divorce her the next day for any reason. And probably the man she was living with that she was not married to was probably a kinsman that had to take her into his house because of social tradition. And her response was not, yes, I'm ashamed. Her response was, wow, you're a prophet. Christians so misread that story, and it makes me so angry. But even then, he put himself at risk, his career at risk, his reputation at risk for this lowest of the low, or the person considered the lowest of the low. A woman, a woman had no value in that culture, and now she's a Samaritan woman getting water in the middle of the day, and he sits with her. You guys are so pious. You think you can walk up to me and tell me I'm a sinner, and you won't spit on the lowest of the low person. You're nothing like Christ. Christ was told that he was a sinner because sinners loved him. The religious people, the good people of the day, the PTA leaders and the little league coaches and the police chiefs, they walked up to him and said, "Is it true that you have a demon and are a Samaritan?" They thought he was disgusting because he hung out with disgusting people. And that's not what Christians are in America today. You run from disgusting people and hang out with each other and tell each other how amazing you. Oh, you're great. No, you're great. I hated on this trans person today. Well, I hated on this queer person today. Well, I told this woman she needs to do that. I told this, and you think you're great, and you're nothing like Christ was. You look nothing like Jesus at all. It's love to tell people they're sick. Now, shut up. You don't know the Bible. That's your problem. There's nothing great about hatred. That's right, Charlotte. That's right. And I'm really tired of it, Christians. Your religion, which is just so far off base from Jesus, destroys people's lives. And you don't give a shit. You're not willing to sit for 1 second and say, wow, Christianity's been wrong a whole bunch other times in history. I wonder if there's any chance if we're wrong now. Because it seems like there's a lot of people out there saying we're causing trauma in people, but nah, I'm told by my shepherd not to think. God's ways are higher than mine. So if it seems like I'm being an asshole, that must be what God wants to happen, and his ways are higher than mine. It's disgusting. It's disgusting. And again, I don't think you're a bad person. I just think you're massively deceived, just as Jesus said you would be. The leaven of bad theology, bad religion, bad politics. Make Israel great again. It will take away your eyes to see and your ears to hear, and you'll no longer be able to hear truth. Or as Romans 12:2 says, to know what is good and right in a season. So just get introspective for a moment. Look in a mirror and say, could it be that we are not the holders of all truth in all the universe for all of history? And maybe I'm doing damage to people by acting pious like this. Because it doesn't seem like Jesus liked pious people very much in the Bible. It's always so fun when Christians use like a right wing propaganda mantra and think they're making points. So General Abraxas something says, "Look in the mirror and say I'm a man," and so yeah, I really got a burn in there, and they think they're making this big point and just really showing how ignorant they are. Jay Skolma says, I agree. There's so much wrong with Christianity today. Do you still follow Jesus? So I, my spirituality is freed and unmoored from a religion, and it's so wonderful because now I have such a great connection to the divine and to everything out there. And I think probably because of heritage and lineage and how I was raised, I still generally spiritually go through Jesus. I think the story is amazing. I love the Bible. I've always been reading the Bible. I understand the Bible for what it is and don't try to make it what it's not. And so yeah, I would say in that, I think what Jesus was truly trying to teach is amazing. I think that what American Christianity has made um Christianity into and Jesus into, I am disgusted fully by. And that white American MAGA Jesus is a terrible thing. But that's not who I think the real Jesus is. And I really don't get into big arguments about was Jesus real or not. Uh, I just think the story is amazing. The through line of the Hebrew scripture through the Christian New Testament of a divine a divine love and wisdom that wants to partner with humanity to make the world a better place. I'm so amazed by that, and I love it so much. Kim says, I would, so I hope I answered your question there, JS. Kim says, I would ask this, those being rude in this thread. I asked this, how did the algorithm find you? Oh, that's interesting. You're welcome, Jay Skolma. Thank you for being here. And wonderful question. Thank you. As I've deconstructed, I've separated following Jesus from Christianity. Yeah, a lot of people I know of say, I follow Jesus, not Christianity. And I think that's a very, very fair thing to say. Stephanie Christine says, yeah, let's not think for ourselves over on Instagram. Thank you, Stephanie. All right, guys, I better get going. I'm enjoying the heck out of this. This is so much fun, but I got to get some work done today. So love you. I'm going to try to be around more often. It's just been a really rough season for a whole lot of reasons, but I do feel like I'm supposed to step up more and say, hey, I'm not totally sure what it means, but I am a trans person. I'm that person you're supposed to be afraid of. And just let me give you a little bit different perspective on things. And so in the issue of trans sports, just let me tell you, you're being manipulated. You haven't thought it through, and there's another way to see it. So Orca Sisley, thank you very much. Charlotte Irene, much love. Thank you all. Stephanie, always wonderful to see you. Stephanie, Christine, and you guys are amazing. All right, TikTok, we'll see you guys later. And all of you on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube, we'll see you again soon. Bye bye.